So a while ago, I found myself at the mall. In the last 5 years, I've maybe averaged one or two mall trips a year. So it's been a while. Because it happens infrequently, it felt new, a little bit shocking. It felt new and just overwhelming. The colors, the lights, the larger-than-life posters telling me all the things that I should need and want felt a bit overwhelming, a little intrusive. Apparently, maybe you knew this, the right face cream or the right shampoo or the right purse is all you need to feel better about yourself. It's all I need to feel better about myself. That's what they were telling me. Whew, who knew it was going to be so easy? But the trouble is, purses wear out. Skin and hair, even when pampered with all the right treatments, age. The satisfaction promised by the ads is at best temporary. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm human, I have a body and senses, and I do find some satisfaction in physical, time-based things. A good meal, a comfortable blanket, a good haircut. These are all things I enjoy. But I know that they are not permanent pleasures. The advertisers know it too, so they turn up the volume. They tweak labels, revise logos, change ads. They tell me that I'm worth it, but they're also quick to jump in with suggestions on how I can improve myself, what I need to do to be enough. And those are just the messages about our physical selves. I put the words self-help into the book search in Amazon. Wow, there were over 80,000 titles returned. From Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People, which I'd heard of, to some I clearly hadn't, 80,000 titles, 14 Habits That Are Holding You Back from Happiness. Wow. The titles go on and on and on. Clearly, we all have work to do. And we do have work to do. We always will. I sometimes imagine that all of us, each person we encounter in the world, on the subway or, in the car beside us, wherever, has a small tattoo somewhere on them that says, "Under construction." I also imagine a second tattoo that reads, "Perfect, just the way I am." I believe both seemingly contrary things. There's a tension in all of this. Striving can get in the way of contentment and gratitude. This is an ancient issue. The Tao Te Ching, over 2,500 years ago, old, has this to say on the topic. There is no greater calamity than not knowing what is enough. No greater curse than covetousness. No greater tragedy than discontentment. And the worst of all the faults, it concludes in this segment, is wanting more, always. Contentment alone is enough. And we find a similar sentiment in the Christian text, Matthew chapter 6. Can any of you add a single hour to the length of your life by worrying? Why do you worry about clothes? Consider the lilies of the field and how they grow. They don't work or spin yarn. But I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was clothed like one of them. Stop fussing, the ancients said. What you have is enough. Wanting more won't make you better, won't make you look better, and it may very well erode your sense of peace. I think it's fair to say that's not a message I'm going to see at the mall anytime soon. Maybe humans have always needed to be reminded of the value of contentment. But I can't help but think that we, with mass media and social media, need the reminder perhaps more than earlier people did. In fact, studies show that the seemingly steady diet of images many of us consume through Facebook, Instagram, and other social media can leave us feeling discontented. As with so many things, it's likely a balancing act. I know that for some people, the connections and community that they enjoy – via their phones and computers can have a positive effect. but the curated versions of other people's lives that we see can reinforce the idea that our own lives are lacking. The opposite of contentment. In 2018, a Canadian internet use survey gave us some information about the negative impacts. They talked to or surveyed individuals between 15 and 64, and they were asked about their use of websites and apps that allowed them to share, read, and create their own content. In each age group, more than half of the respondents reported using social media sites. So half of the people or more, depending on the age. The survey asked about 6 possible negative impacts: lost sleep, difficulties concentrating on tasks or activities, reduction in physical activity, feelings of anxiety or depression, feeling envious of the lives of others, and feelings of frustration or anger. In total, about 20% of the people who said they used media reported at least some of these negative effects. Perhaps most concerning for me is that the negative impacts were magnified in the youngest age groups. We value our well-being, yet many of us struggle to give it the attention it deserves. And these sites can make it more difficult to settle into ourselves and focus on the things that might lead us to greater feelings of contentment. Contentment comes from the Latin contentus, which means held together or intact. And over time, the word evolved into something that could be reflected onto a person, which describes one who feels enough, who feels intact or whole. Contentment is really about how whole do you feel, how complete do you feel as a human being. Most human emotions require external input. They're based on reactions to and relationships with things outside of us. Contentment, on the other hand, doesn't require as much external input and is sometimes sourced entirely from within. If contentment is something we can aspire to, it's useful to know what it is or what it's not. Just knowing what it is, though, doesn't necessarily make it easily attainable. I know that. I think some of us are just really lucky to have temperaments that make contentment more likely. The strong messages we receive make it hard to even understand contentment rather than happiness as the goal, and I don't think they're the same thing. Some of us, for reasons of brain chemistry, privilege, circumstances, will find it more elusive to feel contented. We spend a lot of time in our lives striving for more, striving for happiness. And I've known for a long time, and I'm not sure why I am so lucky to have had this insight. I was in about grade 6, and I was walking home from school, and I had this little 12-year-old epiphany. I remember thinking that happiness, while it was a lovely thing, wasn't the goal, but contentment was. I was walking home, probably about this time of year. There were some cloud formations and some birds flying overhead, and I was struck by the notion that it would be better to focus on being content than happy. More than a few years have passed since that walk home from school, and I think with hindsight that I was right. I also think I was really fortunate to have that insight when I did. And I know that one of the reasons I did is because I had some good teachers. My husband used to say that my grandmother, who lived to be 99, was like the Buddha. She really and truly was. She found joy in loons returning to the lake, even though her husband of 60 years had just died. She knew that stuffing envelopes for the seniors' home where she lived was important because she felt that she could contribute. I was lucky to have her genes, and I am lucky to have her example behind me. Contentment and happiness are not the same thing. Certainly we can have both, at least some of the time. And at least some of the time, both can be elusive. But I believe if we can focus on contentment rather than happiness, we can give ourselves a more solid and longer lasting sentiment, the one that makes a greater contribution to our sense of well-being. I see evidence that it equips us to deal with the troubles of life, the injustice, and the hurts that are always present. These are things we can do, practices we can cultivate that will move us in the direction of contentment. There are things we can do. Each of us must find the practices that work best for them. This is not a one-size-fits-all kind of operation. What works for someone else may not work for you. So I encourage us all to try different things, to figure out what grounds us and gives us that feeling of enough, which is at the basis of contentment. But here's a few practices that people have found useful over time. One is, want what you have. It's a basic gratitude practice. Make a list of things you are grateful for each and every day. Another is, don't make comparisons. If we go through life each day comparing our situation with another's, we will come up short, feeling second-rate or deprived. The Baal Shem Tov, a great Jewish teacher, said, "Compare not yourself to anyone else, lest God's curriculum be spoiled." Practice mindfulness is another suggestion. Mindfulness is the cultivation of focused attention on the present moment, without judging the experience you're having in that moment as good or bad. It is a very well-studied practice that calms the mind and the body. Another suggestion is reevaluate your well-being contingencies. We all have these. When I have X dollars in the bank, then I can relax and be happy. When I retire, I can begin to do the things that I want. When my kids can do X, then I'll know I've been successful as a parent. It's okay to have goals, but if we don't evaluate them and reevaluate them, we may really be telling ourselves that our well-being needs have to wait. And another suggestion is accept all emotions. This one's tough, and most of us don't like it very much. But feelings come and feelings go. Knowing that is important, because if we don't, we hold on tightly to some, even as we work to deny other parts of our human experience. Feeling whole now, feeling complete, requires us to do so even if we're sad or embarrassed or anything else. It's a radical appreciation of all of life's experiences, and that can be a cornerstone for contentment. The idea that right here, right now, everything is okay as it is, no matter how we're feeling. Contentment is the underlying acceptance that we are human, and that's complicated business. So here we are, Thanksgiving Sunday, a holiday which was in Canada traditionally a harvest festival, a Sunday when churches encouraged people to pause, to appreciate the bounty of the earth, and to share what they had. Giving thanks to God may not work for many of you, at least not in the way that it might for others, but that doesn't mean we can't be thankful, that we can't cultivate gratitude, and that we can't develop practices that will help us foster a sense of contentment. You are, I am, whole. We are enough, and we are imperfect, perfectly so. I'm not saying we should all just shrug and say, I'm done, I don't need to grow anymore, but I encourage us to be okay with where we are now, even as we're thinking about where our journey may take us. Thanksgiving seems like a good day to think about contentment and to play around with practices that may help us. Last night before my family's dinner, we went around the table and said what we were thankful for. And somebody said, I'm thankful that it was so hard for me to think of a thing to be thankful, like one thing to be thankful for. We were feeling blessed to be together. For me, one of the things I know I can do is remember that long ago walk home from school. Watching clouds, observing the birds. I've learned that for me, imagining a small lake or watching the silhouette of branches against the sky is enough to ground me, to help me bring all the spinning bits back under control and to feel centered again. I don't know what will work for you, but perhaps today we can all remember these words from the poem I read earlier. I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief. I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light. And for a time I rest in the grace of the world and am free. And so for today, happy Thanksgiving. I wish you peace, and I wish you a moment as you can rest gracefully in the world. Let's take a few breaths.